Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at Knockabout Comics number 1 through 3. This was a British underground comics anthology that started in 1980 and ran for 14 issues all the way up to the 90s. The 14th issue was actually a hardcover book, so I guess that counts, though. It was called Knockabout 14. But I'm just looking at the first 3 issues here because I don't have number 4. I have some other scattered ones after that. But I figured hopefully one day I'll get them and I'll make a video for 4 through 6 at some other point. But there's a lot of good stuff in these. Because they're British, there's a lot of cartoons I've never even heard of. And some of them are outstanding. It's kind of exciting to discover these new artists. So let's start with number 1, beautiful Hunter Emerson cover. If you've watched this channel at all, you know I really, really appreciate Hunter Emerson's art. I think he's one of the finest cartoonists, like pure cartoonists in comics. It's fun. We have a beautiful inside front cover by S. Clay Wilson. I should mention, Knockabout Comics started in like 75 importing or republishing the Freak Brothers for the English market. And pretty soon they were importing all kinds of undergrounds from America. So they had a real connection to the American underground comic scene. So we're going to see a lot of American artists in here, including S. Clay Wilson. That's really nice. The Checkered Demon transcribes the confessions of a heretic priest. Bizarre. So we start off with Hunt Emerson, the Tapeworm Tales, and just typical, beautiful, zany Hunt Emerson art. So the whole shtick of this comic is very odd. It's this weird guy with the hook nose here who has a talking teapot that he loves to regale with tales of parasites. This guy is just fascinated with parasites. And this poor teapot, I guess, just has to sit there and take it. He can't move, so he just has to listen to all these weird tales. And I have a feeling they're real. I think Hunt Emerson was probably reading up on parasites. And, it's kind of fascinating, these little stories about parasites. Like, for example, there's a wee beastie that lives in the islands of a fish, drinking their optic fluids. And then just talking about the life cycles of all these weird parasites. It's kind of interesting, actually. But of course, just drawn, just so beautifully, just so much fun. But then things get a little weird here. We see the panel wrinkle. And then all of a sudden, we see Hunt Emerson drawing the comic. He's sitting on a giant page. And this weird, cuckoo bird comes up. And he basically says, all this talk about parasites, there's not enough visual gags in this strip. He's like his editor. And so Hunt Emerson says, do you think so? So he just puts in all these crazy, goofy sight gags for 2 pages, or almost 2 pages. And then Hunt Emerson says, is that enough? And the cuckoo bird says, it'll do. Now let's get back to the plot. So now we go back to the story. That's the kind of shit I love that Hunt Emerson does. He just totally, it's beyond breaking the 4th wall. It's just like demolishing the whole house and then just going off on these little asides. And we get back to the parasites. All really pretty funny, interesting stories. Just look at these panels, how great they are. Yeah, at one point the teapot contradicts him and he smashes the teapot into little pieces. But of course, he has a whole cupboard of other teapots that he just replaces and starts where he left off. Now, where was I? So you can imagine this guy's done this many times before. That's why he has a cupboard of teapots. Just his lettering is so lively. Look at this great lettering, these sound effects. Wonderful stuff. This next one is Avita Bendix, The Price to Pay. This is by George Sostek. And I've seen him in other I think he was in Escape magazine, that great English magazine, and I think he did like mini comics. And these are just 2 strips, each one a half page. First one, Evita Bendix. It's just her basically putting up with this egotistical guy because she wants to get laid. And Gary Goyle, he's the victim of a terrible nuclear reactor accident. So he's just really messed up. And basically his life is pretty shitty. You know, people treat him like a monster. And one day this little ball with wings says, you should, don't you want to sit near the throne of the Almighty One? You spent, all these years living in misery. God loves you and is proud of you. It's time to ascend to heaven, Gary. So Gary throws himself in front of a truck. And then we see that it's all the machinations of this dude here. And he's talking to that little ball with wings. And he says, there, another job well done by Captain Handsome. Another ugly bites the dust. I really like that one. Oh, this is a treat. Melinda Gebbie doing My Three Swans. And it's just this crazy, almost character piece about, we see this mother so proud of her beautiful daughters. But her daughters are all psychopaths. They hate men. And she talks about when they were little kids, they would pick on all the other boys. They'd actually injure them. They're just these really, they basically hate everyone except for themselves. All the sisters love each other, and everyone else, especially boys, they hate. And we see them over the years torturing those poor little kids, breaking their ribs. And so they go to a radical women's college after school, grade school. I love Melinda Gebbie. I wish she would do more. And they each have different fathers. So Mitzi, she's one of the daughters. Her father died when they were in college. And so when the daughters graduate, and it turns out they marry each other. They have a 3-way marriage because they hate everyone else. Such a weird ending. This next one is The King. This is by Cliff Harper. Cliff Harper did lots of political comics. In fact, for the most part, he did political comics. Kind of, anti-Thatcher type left-wing comics. And the words to this, he's illustrating a traditional song. Basically, it's when the peasants rose up against the king about, I don't know, what was that, 1600? It didn't last long, unfortunately, but they tried to depose the king. I think they succeeded for like a minute, but I could be thinking of a Cromwell era. I'm a little confused about my British history. And so this was a song the peasants used to sing, basically kind of a mocking song about the king. And we see these rebels fighting the king's soldiers. Not much of a comic. This guy's really good. I've definitely seen him before, Graham Manley. And this is called World of the Future. And we see this horrible, dystopic future. But the way this guy, this kind of Sharpie is describing it, he's like, it's the perfect world. We've made a utopia. Because there's all these domed cities because it looks like the earth has totally been trashed. And it's a total fascist state. And he pulls off his mask at the end. He says, "A radiated pig." This I like how this guy's almost looks like Judge Dredd here. These fascist cops. Really sharp, really nice art. Great lettering, everything. This guy's he's got it. These aren't so good. This is called Art School Heroine. And this is by, let me see the name here. Parkin and Vardy. So I don't know. I assume one's a writer, one's an artist. There's no first name. I couldn't find the information on the internet. And these are basically, you could tell this woman probably went to art school. And these are little gags about being in art school. It's almost like Art School Confidential, but not nearly as funny or interesting. They're almost like little Nancy strips, daily comic strips, little gags about all the weirdos you meet in art school. Not much there. Now we have Large Cow Comics. This is another Hunt Emerson story. And this is Hunt Emerson just being totally surreal. Like, look at these pages. This is just like, there's not even much connectivity between these panels sometimes. It's just like, oh, here's an image of this. I love the way he draws this bird. This bird of prey. So this stars Alan Rabbit. That's a long time Hunt Emerson character. Oh, I guess that's it. Yeah, just a very odd strip. I think it's great, though. I almost wouldn't even know it's Hunt Emerson, except for the Alan Rabbit there. But all this doesn't really look like him. It looks great, though. Next, we have another strip by that George Sostek guy. I kind of like his style. It's very unique. And it's very, like, kind of just perfect for, like, a comic strip. This is about some guy, Edsel P. Disgust. And he's a hermit. And he's got to go into the big city to get a part for his wine press. And, of course, he gets into all these hijinks and conflicts with people. The police fuck with him. Everyone's fucking with him. Because he's a naked guy. Just wearing he's just fuzzy all over. His wings hanging out. So he needs to find this one store. Apparently, the store's out of business. It's been demolished. And so he can't find his part. And, of course, more conflict and crazy shit happens. The police start firing at him. He escapes them. And then he sees this guy, and he's hauling all this stuff. And it seems like he knows Mr. Disgust. I guess Mr. Disgust is almost has a little bit of celebrity as being a famous hermit who has, gotten away from it all, which is, in the 70s and late 60s and 70s, that was a big thing where the counterculture was just like getting back to the land and stuff. So he asks for a ride from the guy, Disgust. He just wants to go home. He's like, I'm sorry, I'm going the other way. Turns out he's the grandson of the guy who owned that hardware store. And he's actually hauling all of the stuff that was in the store to a scrap metal place. So he's like, oh, do you mind if I look through the scrap metal? And he finds like all the parts that he needs for his wine press. So it works out for the best. And then he's heading back home. And I guess we see this father and his son, and their dog's missing. And meanwhile, he's so tired, Edsel. He's crawling home, and that dog comes from out of nowhere. And the last panel looks like he's going to mount him and hump him. The dog is thinking, not only pretty, but it speaks too. God, I love you. This one, it's an unknown artist here. Ken and Roz, the street fighting people. And these are kind of like cutesy comic strips about kind of a, radical political couple, how they deal with romance. But they're also incredibly doctrinaire, hardcore political people. I should say the man is. The woman, not so much. Kind of interesting. And here we have another S. Clay Wilson story. Really weird, starting with this photo Where will you meet your Waterloo? This little character says. And we see this guy, Howard Riggs, and he's running through the forest. God, look how good this is. I love the sequence of panels, the cinematic. It's rare for S. Clay Wilson to slow down this much, to actually have like that kind of storytelling. Usually he's just like throwing so much shit in every panel, all this crazy stuff. This guy, it's raining outside. He finds a house and he asks for shelter. This beautiful woman answers the door. And she gives him some tea, but it's got knockout drops in it. And when he wakes up, he's in this, it says he finds himself in the normal machine, which I don't know what that means, but it's some kind of thing where he can only peer out. He sees the woman take off her shirt, and her boobies turn into the eyes of a fly, a giant fly. And then all of a sudden he gets electrocuted, goes bzzzt. And then that, I guess the fly is turned back to the woman, and there's another woman there. And she says, another one for the normal shelf, Marlene. Let's stick them up there. So I guess these women have been preying on men for a long time. Here's that guy, George Sostek again, Zippy Moore. And this is just kind of goofy gag strip about this guy who's really fast. Which in the last panel we find out isn't so good when it comes to lovemaking. His girlfriend's all pissed at him. This is interesting as hell. Black Cat City, written by J. Kinney, art by Adam Cornford. And this is like, I didn't know this. It reminds me of like an early Dan Clowes comic that would be in Lord Llewellyn, even though it's very different. But it's very like, it's not very linear. It's almost like some beatnik poem illustrated by this guy. A dozen crimson strangers wrestle to their deaths. Black blood flows like spider webs. Karl Marx arrives by Toyota, enveloped in a cloud of crows. Your mother watches disguised as a nun. This is really interesting prose. Or it's almost like poetry, prose poetry. Furnace blasts are bottled and exchanged for tarot cards. The city wakes its children as sunflowers turn without stopping. I don't know, I really like this. I really like the art too. Excuse me. Let me get a tissue. And then we have another, we finish off with a beautiful S. Clay Wilson little mini pinup. And it's just craziness going on. Very typical S. Clay Wilson. But God, man, he just kept getting better and better. I mean, this is 1980 S. Clay Wilson. And I gotta say, I think the art, just the pure art of it, is so much better than, the heyday of the hippie comics. He was so good then. But this stuff is just getting out of hand good. And then we have a back cover by Clifford Harper. Kind of lackluster. I guess this was a poster you could buy. Seems like something like Neil from The Young Ones would have that poster. Oh, I'm sorry, not Neil. Wick would have that. We have number 2. Start off with a nice cover by S. Clay Wilson here, featuring the Checkered Demon. We have this first story, and this is David Hine. He went on to do like a kind of more mainstream stuff. But this is definitely, because it's like teenage angst stuff. We see this like young punk. It's you could tell David Hine's a young cartoonist. He's name checking all his favorite bands on the posters on the wall. He's wearing a Divine t-shirt. And he's basically in a bad space. His girlfriend left him. And he's imagining her with her new boyfriend just in a very dark place. She's in France. They had this long distance thing going on, but he blew it. And he loses his job. and he gets evicted. And this is just a very, early 1980 English comic. It's a very Thatcher England. Just all these poor people walking around. Everyone's not doing too good. And so he finds this squat. And there's all these rats here. He finds an old tramp that the rats have eaten like half the body. Oh, and I guess he's like, I don't know if he's actually injured, but he's basically like, I don't know, maybe just so fucked up from booze and from not eating that he just can't move. And as he's sitting there in the house, basically the rats are moving in on him, and it just ends like that. We see the rats in the window. Kind of weird thing. We see his skeleton, and it's like basically reformulating into the guy. Now we get more Hunt Emerson here. Funny Mutant Comics. I'm sorry, this is Graham Manley again, not Hunt Emerson. Funny Mutant Comics presents History is Bunk. Look how great this logo is. That's like William Stout good. There's that mutated pig we saw from that last issue, the Graham Manley comic. So we see this guy traversing through this, poisoned earth, this cursed earth, and kind of looks like a weird mutated dog. And he sees this like giant capsule. And when it opens up, it's this TV screen. And it says, "Greetings from Earth. We're here to bring you all of the examples of our high civilization. This will transform your backward planet." And so for some reason, I guess there's nothing alive on this planet. So it's just because it's moving, this dog character starts humping the machine, this kind of robot thing, and it makes it explode. And like a piñata, it releases all of this previously mentioned, treasures of civilization. And we see like a Walter Keane painting, a crappy VHS piranha women, and just all this crap, consumer crap. And so the dog just grabs some microwave heated Kentucky Fried Chicken and walks away. Oh, so I guess he had help with the story from Brian Robertson. I didn't mention that. This guy's really good. I really like Graham Manley. I think I have more of his stuff in other English comics. Just really sharp artist. This is another unknown artist, at least the internet. They didn't know who drew these. The Crash Street Squat. And, wait, did I find out who? No, I think I couldn't find out who did this. And this is a parody of the Bash Street Kids. That was a famous English kids comic. But of course, these guys are like anarchist punks, hippies. And they find the squat, and then they decide, to get more political and be active. So they kidnap a meter maid. The rest of the comic, they're all dressed in this brick camo so they can fit in with the city. They can blend in. So they kidnap this meter maid, and the whole time she's just lovely. They've kidnapped her, but she's always just like, "Oh, I'd fancy a cup of tea." And she's like just this sweet lady who's like darning socks. And they're trying to be mad at her and like act like she's the oppressor, but they're just like, she ends up befriending everyone there. And so finally, their ransom is met. But the meter maid doesn't want to leave. She says, after all, property is theft, you know. They can stuff their silly old money. I'm going to stay right here while we smash the system. Kind of fun. I really like this meter maid character. But I don't know what this artist really, if he always draws like this or if he's trying to duplicate that Bash Street Kid style. Whoever this artist is. So we just saw this comic reprinted in Fly in My Eye, the first one. Arnold Gets Gross. This is Brian Talbot of Luther Arkwright fame. And this is just a gorgeous story. But I'm not going to really get into the nitty-gritty. Like, I think we looked at this like a month ago, or 2 at the most. But it's a very, like, kind of EC type. Well, it's an EC by way of underground kind of horror comic. This could have been in Skull or Boogeyman. Really well-drawn stuff. Brian Talbot already had, he was pretty damn tight, even by the late 70s. He was pretty damn good. And he just kept getting better. Oh, this is nice. They got Bill Griffith to contribute a story. The Case Against Kissinger. And this is just some really good Bill Griffith satire and bizarre Dadaism. This guy is kind of like a detective. He's got this little baby assistant who's got this weird, like, Beethoven haircut. Just a very strange duo. This weird clown guy comes in, and he says he needs his this book back that was stolen from him. It's a 1952 Johnson Smith catalog. That was the company that made all those gag gifts that you could see advertised in comic books, like Joy Buzzers and Onion Gum. So this guy's like, it's like my Bible. I must have it back. So he's on the case. He investigates these beatniks at a cafe. Once again, an Edward Hopper tribute. God, if only that guy copyrighted his painting, he'd be rich. And he sees Henry Kissinger just like passed out in a gutter. And he's got the catalog in his hand that the catalog is looking for. And yeah, it's kind of hard to describe. It would take a long time, but it's just typical Bill Griffith. Every panel is packed with like just really good Dada humor. Next, we have Clifford Harper getting away from the political and very different style than he normally draws. Really nice. And this is just like a childhood remembrance story. When him and his friends were in school, they used to like to take their jackets and wrap them around their shoulders as if they were capes. They thought it made them look powerful and whatever, regal. And just remembering a day when they would kind of rush the girls. There'd be a circle of girls, and these guys would just like rush them and almost try to corral them and wrangle them. Like one would come from one side, one would come from the other. And the narrator basically corners this one girl. I guess he's had a crush on her for a while. Man, this is really nice art. Or at least very detailed. And he smacks a kiss on her, and the girl runs away. And later on, we see that guy grown up. And he's wondering what he should wear to a dinner party. Casual or whatever. And then he ends up tying his jacket around his neck like when he was a little kid. This next guy is this Paul Bignell. And just a very weird little one-pager. Oh, guys, this is so beautiful. The checkered demon searches for the perfect pint. Look how many panels is in every page of this. And everyone is packed with beautiful, detailed S. Clay Wilson art. He really did not skimp on this comic. He was probably on speed. And the checkered demon is wandering from bar to bar trying to find the perfect pint of beer. Everyone he gets is just like piss. So he just spits it out into the barkeep or who's ever next to him. And, of course, it always ensues to a bar brawl. So he keeps getting kicked out of these bars. Oh, my God, this motorcycle. I really wish this was printed bigger. I wonder if this was for another larger comic or magazine, and they shrunk it down because it's really tiny, but it looks great anyway. But I would love to see it bigger. He hooks up with this punk rock chick. She takes him to a punk rock place, and the beer there sucks too. And then at the last place, the beer sucks, and he starts another fight. And at the last bar he goes into, he says, "I'd like the perfect pint." And the bartender says, "Aye, and people in hell want ice water." It's a good capper. Another large cow comic from Hunt Emerson. We see this guy who he realizes his face has gone pliable. And so he decides to shape it like an aircraft carrier. He's pretty pleased with himself. And he's walking around. This is a big traffic jam. And we see Alan Rabbit again, a.k.a. Bill the Bunny. Bill the Bunny, absentmindedly runs into this truck. The trucker comes out angry. And he drop kicks Alan. And then Alan meets the guy with the aircraft carrier head. Look at this crazy background here. That's just like a Harriman in overdrive. Meanwhile, there's this fighter jet. Excuse me. And they're like, "Mayday, Mayday, we're going down. We can't find anywhere to land." And they see that guy, and they land on his head. That's who he basically says, "Do you mind getting off my head, off my face?" And he figures he'll show them, and he remushes his face or reformulates it. But now the jet craft is kind of all intertwined with his face. He does it again, and he turns himself into this insane hybrid creature. It's half jet plane and half the dude. That's just nuts. It looks like some, almost like a modern art thing. And he takes off after the rabbit. They have this race. God, this is just so fun. I love this panel here. All these panels are great. Hunt Emerson's amazing. And then it ends with Alan the Rabbit running into another 18-wheel truck. And we see the trucker get all angry. And, of course, it's probably going to start all over again. It's interesting that Knockabout, this is an ad for their comics. And their mascot is a total ripoff of Kitchen Sink Press, Mr. Krupp. That totally looks like him, except he's bald. And this is really nice. We get a Gilbert Shelton back cover. One of his kind of auto-fetishistic, you might say autoerotic strips, where he just tricks out this double-decker bus. And it's not even really trying to be funny. It's like really just this like almost nerdy, the kind of things you draw when you're in class and bored. Like, oh, if I had a double-decker bus that was like luxury, how would I design it? Like, he's got floor plans. So it's converted into this basically mini mansion on wheels. It's got a chandelier, a snooker table, which has hydraulic leveling devices. So even while the bus is rolling, you can still play pool, which I don't think that would ever work. But I kind of like these things, just because it reminds me, I used to do anal little things like this when I was a kid. And now we have number 3. Another beautiful Hunt Emerson cover. This is from an inside story, just a little panel blown up by Steve Gibson. So now we have Son of Tapeworm Tales by Hunt Emerson. And it just continues. We see that weird guy with the hook nose talking to the teapot and talking about more parasites, more interesting facts. But then he's basically is so filled with this almost zeal for parasites that he realizes he has to run out into the world like some crazy religious guy. And he's just running around bothering people. Like, I have to tell you about parasites. And it looks like he finds Hunt Emerson, because that's how Hunt Emerson draws himself. And he tells him some more interesting parasite tales. And he posits his plan for the world using these parasites. You could make the perfect world. It's not really. It's this insane world where there'd only be 2 people left on the planet, and they'd all be gigantic, and robots would take care of their every need. So everyone on Earth would be happy, but it would just be 2 giants. And so apparently Hunt Emerson becomes an acolyte, kind of gets brainwashed by him, and he runs into the local police station and spouts this theory, this crazy idea of having the 2 giant people. And the Brits sent him to America. It looks like Ronald Reagan. And of course, they're all like, the military applications of all this could be amazing. Let's set him up in a lab. And they basically make tapeworms be this like patriotic thing. Parasites are the patriotic pet through this propaganda. Next, we have this guy, Slim Smith. These little half-page comics. Ernie's Born Again Snack Bar. These are very odd. I kind of like them. Very weird sense of humor. And just a weird situation where he's this born-again guy who owns a diner. And basically, they're just like little gags. But very strange. Definitely a different sense of humor than most people, cartoonists. Excuse me, guys. And now we have another Clifford Harper story. And this is him illustrating a poem by Baudelaire. It's a love poem, but he's contrasting it with a guy having a rendezvous with a prostitute. And therein lies the Frisian. His art, once again, looks kind of different here. It's really weird. I almost see like this weird hybrid of like Trina Robbins with just a little hint of Jaime Hernandez, if that makes any sense. It's very, I kind of like this art. So I don't know why I just see a little Jaime there. Not nearly as good, but a little. And now we have Fred Fallow, War Criminal. This is by a guy named Willem, just one name. And we see this guy, we don't know why he's had a long absence, but Fred Fallow is staying with his girlfriend. These soldiers bust in and grab Fred Fallow. And it's this crazy thing where like the military is taken over and they're basically sentencing him for basically being a Lothario, for impregnating all these women over the years, having sex with women. And they give his punishment is you will serve the people by feeding starving children, and these ravenous, almost monstrous little children. It seems like they go right for his crotch. And it turns out to be all a dream. And he wakes up, and his girlfriend was giving him a morning surprise. She's filleting him. And so that's why he was dreaming of those kids gobbling his knob. I really like this guy. This is a Claris cupboard by Steve Gibson. I don't know much about Steve Gibson, but man, this is great stuff. Narratively, it's just kind of but I love his art, and it is really interesting. It's just kind of surreal, bizarre comics. And this is like the kind of prose, the captions, which if you've noticed, they're in that EC font, like EC Comics. As night crawls along the sky in a black belly, we're just in time to see Sergeant Cloughton accompanying the Prince of Denmark and a mysterious prisoner of theirs. And so they come to this cottage. This girl lives there, a little girl. She offers them refuge. Outside the cozy cottage in the clockwork forest, amongst the black cogwheel trees and metal plants, there were 3 rogues armed to the teeth, glaring at the cottage from out of their clanking, grinding foliage. So with no explanation, this is just this other alternate reality where the forests are all clockwork and gears instead of branches and stuff. And these guys basically they're looking in on the cottage. They're the enemies of these guys hanging out there. So it turns out their prisoner is the death frog. They take off his hood so he can have a little food and breathe a little. And the guys inside, what's his name? Let me see real quick. Sergeant Cloughton and the Prince of Denmark start realizing that there's guys outside with ill intent. And then we see the guy who basically commanded those guys to take the death frog. And this is just so weird where I just can't tell what this is. It's kind of a creature, monster, dude, but it's just so abstracted. I was staring at this for like 5 minutes last night. I really like it, whatever it is. I think this guy definitely was influenced by S. Clay Wilson. Even his lettering looks kind of like him. So here we have part 2. And we see this character, the Worm King. And I guess the death frog is destined to eat him. But I guess if before then, he's scheduled to surface and inherit the world. So this is just very, kind of surreal. The plot doesn't really matter. It's just all these interesting little... We see these ever babies, mainly trained to infiltrate and kill the drunken infant eaters who dwell on the outskirts of the forest, which doesn't really matter to the plot at all. And so eventually that Worm King comes to that cottage and the death frog eats him, which basically means it's the final night of the world. And that's how it ends. Really impressed by this. I gotta find more stuff by Steve Gibson. Now we have another comic by George Sostek. This is really odd, this one. So we see this guy, typical middle-class guy, and his daughter, Sandra, ran off with some crazy, punk rocker, junkier type. And as he's walking down the street, he's commenting. He sees a riot in the streets. And he's commenting on all, how things are so bad now. And nobody respects law and order. He's a total, just basically right wing. He's like a Tory. So he finally finds his daughter. And she's with that punk rocker. And it seems like this punk rocker is a totally, sweet guy. He's offering her a flower. But he wants to kick his ass. And the daughter starts crying. And she says, "The devil got in me for a while, but he's gone now, honest. Though you'll have to punish me anyway, won't you, Daddy?" "Yes, I will. As for you, young man." And I guess he is a good Christian because he has God smite the punk's eyes so he's blinded. "Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord." And this is where it gets just really fucked up. Where the daughters are like, "Now you have to do the same for naughty Sandra in the usual way." And Well, I don't want your imagination to go there, but apparently they have this incestuous relationship, and they go inside this cottage to do their disgusting business. Next, we have Riot. This is a story by Vicky and art by David Hine. And this is from the point of view of a police officer. His own daughter hates him because, he's a pig. And he, tries to talk to her and say, we're not all pigs, A lot of us are here defending people. And we see, though, a riot happen. Well, it's a street protest. And then the cops overdo it. And they're bashing heads in. And, of course, the narrator just thinks, yeah, we're doing our jobs. This is great. And he sees some looters. And he corners one of them in a store. And he basically just kills them with his club. And the whole time he hears his daughter's voice yelling, pig, pig, pig. I guess he's not dead, sorry. He's half dead. But then as they lead him away, all of a sudden he has this revelation. He feels sick and ashamed. And he realizes that he's not the good guy. And neither are his colleagues. And he refuses to testify to convict this guy. And he basically leaves the police force. But at least he can respect himself now. So kind of a weird little story. Like, it's kind of dumb. Like, all of a sudden, after a lifetime of this, just from beating up one guy, this police officer's like, oh my, I've been wrong all this time. This is kind of a cute story. This guy's got a nice little funny animal style. It's called Morty the Mole. It's by Kev Hopgood. And it's just a cute little funny animal strip. Kind of like it. And this one's really nice. It's by a guy who's just called Pockets. Pokketz. It's called The Brief Affair. And look at this. This is just slick. It's slicker than grease. We see this guy. He's a debt collector. And his name's Shadrach Dark. And I guess he was kicked out of the Raj in India. And so now he's a debt collector. But look at this shit. How is this guy, how did he not end up at 2000 AD or something? Maybe he did, because this is a pen name, obviously, Pockets. So he goes to collect this debt, and there's this beautiful woman at the house instead of this old couple. And she totally starts flirting with him, basically, and says, can I buy you dinner? He's like, I'll never turn down a free meal. They have a delightful evening, and he feels really never felt so close to someone. And they go back to her place, and she sleeps with him. And then the ending, which has no build-up to this at all, it doesn't make any sense. When she goes to turn off the light, her arm stretches and stretches across the carpet, up the distant wall, to turn out the light. And that's the end. I don't know if that's supposed to be scary, if she's some kind of monster that's now going to eat him. We don't know. There's no reason for this, or no clue that this was going to happen. And this guy isn't really even that evil. It's not like, oh, this guy deserves his punishment. I mean, I guess he is a debt collector who, kicks people out of their houses. That's his job, though. But still, just a really odd comic. But, man, the chops on this guy. Look how nice this art is. This could be in heavy metal. This is nice as hell. Really good stuff. I gotta find more of this guy's stuff. And then we have a back cover by Hunt Emerson. Going to Sleep with Hunt Emerson. Kind of funny. Comics, 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 comics. Sex. Comics, 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 comics. That's how I sleep, I think. That could be me. So here we go, guys. Knockabout number 1 through 3. I wish I had them all. I don't like to do these piecemeal reviews of little bits of things, but I'm running out of undergrounds. If you want to check out that note I left on the site, on the channel, I am asking for donations of undergrounds. There's a list of what I do have on there, not what I need. So if you have any of the holes in between those numbers that I listed, any of the things I'm missing, that would be great if you get in touch with me on my Gmail account, which is on the comments, and we can work out something. I'll even pay postage at this point. I'm getting desperate. I'm running low on my undergrounds. The ones I can show on YouTube. I have tons, but I'm not allowed to show them on YouTube because they're too naughty. So I'm working on starting I'm trying to do an OnlyFans page, but it keeps stymieing me. It won't let me do it. It's saying that my photo ID picture isn't good enough. All this weird shit. So I'm going to try Pornhub next. So I might have a Pornhub station soon, unless they give me lots of beef and make it hard, because I'm an idiot with technology. But in the meantime, you have us here at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies and our R-rated, sometimes a little more, but we always have an adult advisory when that's the case. So send me any undergrounds you guys have doubles of, if it's no skin off your nose, and you'll have my eternal gratitude, and this will be a better channel. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time here at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.